Riley Jackson was a quiet girl who had just transferred to Oak Ridge High. When the school bullies pulled her hair in the hallway, no one knew who she was. Her karate championships, the defensive techniques her father had taught her since childhood, how she healed broken bones. And that day, everyone learned why Riley was the daughter of a warrior nicknamed the Tiger. The wide corridors of Oak Ridge High were filled with students, as usual. Locker doors slammed, laughter echoed, and people gathered in groups sharing daily gossip. It was a typical American high school. Athletes, popular kids, science kids, and artists, all settled in their own corners, according to the unwritten rules of social hierarchy. Riley Jackson, with her blonde hair and intelligent, careful gaze, had transferred in the middle of senior year, which was almost an impossible task in the high school world. She and her father had just moved to town last week. Today was her first day at Oak Ridge High. Moving to a new city, starting at a new school, these were routine for Riley. Her father, Doug Tiger Jackson, was a famous name in the martial arts world, and his career had dragged them across the country. In the last 6 years, they had lived in 4 different cities. Each time, Riley had to make new friends, get used to new teachers, and adapt to a new social order. Long ago, Riley had developed a strategy. Don't draw attention, stay quiet, don't get into trouble. This way, she could transition through the social chaos with minimal damage. After each move, her father would tell her the same thing. Martial arts are for self-defense. Never be the first to attack. I'm looking for room 107, Riley asked a passing student, examining the direction signs. The girl gave Riley a once-over. Science lab. End of the corridor on the right. Thank you, Riley said with a slight smile. Riley walked with her head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Her clothes were brand new but not fashionable. Since she and her father moved frequently, Riley kept her wardrobe practical and functional. She didn't want to draw attention. She never did. Hey, look, new girl, said a voice behind her. Come here, blondie. Riley continued as if she hadn't heard, but her steps quickened. She could sense the tension, the hairs on the back of her neck standing up. She took a deep breath, as her father had taught her. Stay calm, focus, assess the situation. 3 male students were following her. The one in front, clearly the leader, was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair, a typical football player type. The 2 boys behind him were also athletic, clearly members of the school sports team. They all wore the same team jackets, Oak Ridge Wolves. I'm talking to you, new girl, said the leader, now approaching Riley. I'm Brock, captain of the football team here. We want to give you a welcome party. Riley continued walking without hesitation. No, thank you. I'll be late for class. A harsh expression appeared on Brock's face. No one at Oak Ridge High said no to him. He cut off Riley's path, and his friends stood beside him, surrounding the girl. Okay, new girl. Listen up now, said Brock, lowering his voice. You need to know who's important in this school. And that's me. Riley's mind was working rapidly, assessing the situation, thinking about options. 3 boys, 1 in front, 2 on the sides. There are still other students in the hallway, but their numbers are decreasing. The bell is about to ring. Riley took another deep breath. Please let me pass. I want to get to class. One of Brock's friends, Damon, laughed. Wow, a serious student, I guess. Damon was a red-haired boy with a freckled face and mocking look in his green eyes. The other friend, Eric, was shorter and more stocky, like a wrestler. You just got here and already want to set the rules, huh? Said Brock, now leaning towards Riley. Look, we just want you to understand how things work around here. Everyone does what I want, especially new sweet girls. Riley said nothing, lowering her eyes. This behavior seemed encouraging to Brock. Once again, he approached before speaking, invading Riley's personal space. What's wrong, cat got your tongue? You're probably very shy. Maybe we should entertain you a bit. The hallway was now almost empty. The bell was about to ring, and most students had gone to their classrooms. Only a few onlookers remained, watching from a distance. Look, guys, I just want to get to class, said Riley, trying to keep her voice calm. I don't want any trouble on my first day. Oh, but we do, said Brock, grinning at his friends. Your first day at Oak Ridge should be memorable, right, guys? Damon and Eric laughed, nodding in agreement. Suddenly, Brock reached out and grabbed Riley's long blonde hair, tugging it slightly. "What beautiful hair you have." "Maybe." What happened next was so fast that even the onlookers couldn't fully understand. Riley moved so quickly that her movements were a blur. One moment Brock was holding Riley's hair, the next he was on the ground, his arm bent at an odd angle, crying out in pain. Riley had grabbed Brock's arm in one motion, bending it with a martial arts technique, using gravity and the laws of physics to her advantage. A single series of movements was enough for Brock to find himself on the ground, his arm under complete control and in pain. A wave of shock spread through the corridor. Damon and Eric stood frozen, unable to comprehend what had happened to their friend. "Let me go!" Brock cried out in pain. "You'll break my arm." "If you pull my hair again, I really will break it," Riley said, her voice calm but in a steely tone. "And this is just for my hair. If I see you threatening or bullying anyone else, both your arms will share the same fate." When the two bully friends began to move toward Riley, she applied a bit more pressure to Brock's arm, causing him to yell louder. "This applies to you too," Riley said, looking at Damon and Eric. "If you take one more step, your friend's arm breaks. Think about how he'll spend the football season." The two boys paused, looked at each other, then backed away. "Now," said Riley, slightly loosening her grip on Brock's arm, "if you understand me, nod your head." Brock, groaning in pain, nodded. "Good," said Riley. "And I'm saying this just once. If I see you touch me or anyone else again, the consequences won't be this light." Riley slowly released Brock's arm and took a step back, ready for a new attack at any moment. Brock got up shakily, holding his arm. There was a mixture of fear and anger in his eyes. Who are you?" "I'm just someone who wants to attend classes and graduate," said Riley. "But it seems I need to introduce myself. I'm Riley Jackson. My father is Doug Tiger Jackson, 5-time world karate champion, and I've been training with him for 10 years. This name spread in whispers throughout the corridor. To those familiar with the martial arts world, Tiger Jackson was a legendary name, a former Olympic medalist, now owner of a martial arts school chain, the subject of countless films and documentaries. "Impossible," said Damon. "That man's a legend." "Yes, and he's my father," said Riley. "Now let me get to class." Brock and his friends stepped aside to let Riley pass. Riley continued walking calmly, as if she hadn't just floored the school's most powerful bully. "This isn't over," Brock muttered after her, but his voice lacked its previous confidence. Riley turned and looked over her shoulder. "Yes, it is. Or if you want to continue, my father's dojo is open after school. I'm expecting you and all your friends." Just then, a teacher appeared at the end of the corridor. "Hey, you!" The bell rang. "Why aren't you in your classrooms?" Riley quickly headed for room 107, not wanting to suffer the embarrassment of being late on her first day at school. But as she entered the door, she felt the whole class looking at her. First day, first class, and Riley had already become the most talked about person in school. The morning classes somehow passed by. Every time she entered a classroom, Riley felt curious looks on her. She heard whispers. "That's the girl. She floored Brock. Her father's a world champion." At one point, walking in the corridor, a group of freshman students looked at her admiringly. Riley sighed, too late to avoid drawing attention. At lunchtime, the whole school was talking about Riley Jackson and the hallway incident that morning. The story had grown, exaggerated, embellished. According to some versions, Riley had thrown Brock 5 meters away. According to others, Riley actually came from a secret ninja family. Riley sat alone in the corner of the cafeteria with a simple lunch she had brought from home and an open book in front of her. As she ate quietly, a growing group of students cast curious glances at her. A girl with short black hair and glasses gathered her courage and approached Riley's table. "Hi," said the girl. "I'm Olivia. Can I sit here?" Riley looked up from her book and smiled slightly. "Of course." Olivia sat down and remained silent for a moment, as if gathering her courage. "About this morning, it was really impressive. Brock Wilson has been bullying everyone for the past 3 years." "I was just defending myself," said Riley. "But how did you do it?" Olivia asked, her voice rising with excitement. One moment Brock was pulling your hair, then he was on the ground. A technique that's a mix of Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu, said Riley, putting down her sandwich, using the opponent's strength and balance against them. My father has been teaching me this since I was 8. So is Tiger Jackson really your father? Asked Olivia. Riley sighed. Yes, but it's not a big deal. He's just my dad. Not a big deal? Olivia asked in surprise. That man is a legend. 5 world championships, 3 Olympic medals, and also a dad who eats too much sugar at breakfast and leaves his socks everywhere, Riley said with a slight laugh. Trust me, at home he's not that impressive. Olivia laughed. You just moved here, right? Yes, last week. My father's opening a dojo here. That's why we moved. Wow, said Olivia. So you also… Yes, I also practice martial art, said Riley, almost since I was born. Is that why you floored Brock like that? Riley shrugged. Just a move. My father always says defend yourself, but never attack. What about Brock? Olivia asked, looking around. What do you think he'll do now? I mean, he might try to get revenge. Riley thoughtfully took a bite of her sandwich. Maybe, but now he knows who I am. And more importantly, he needs to know who he is. What do you mean? My father always says, true power is not about crushing others. It's about lifting them up. Brock bullies others to feel powerful. But that's not real power. Olivia nodded, then looked at Riley more carefully. How many times have you moved? I mean, have you faced situations like this before? Riley put down her sandwich. 4 cities in 6 years. And yes, there was a Brock in every new school. Some worse, some better. And did you always floor them? Olivia asked, her eyes wide. Riley laughed. No, it's usually not this dramatic. Most of the time, people back off when they realize you're not afraid of them. But sometimes someone needs to learn a lesson. Just then, the cafeteria entrance doors opened, and Brock, Damon, and Eric entered. Brock's arm was bandaged. The 3 headed directly for Riley's table. The entire cafeteria fell silent. Everyone was curious to see what would happen after the morning incident. Riley gave Olivia a reassuring look, then turned to Brock and his friends, calm but alert. Jackson, said Brock, standing in front of the table. Wilson, Riley replied. There was a moment of silence. Then Brock unexpectedly extended his hand. I'm sorry, he said, avoiding her eyes, for pulling your hair. Riley looked at him with surprise. This was not what she expected. Brock continued. I went to the infirmary. The nurse examined my arm. There's a strain, but it's not broken. I was lucky. I was controlled, Riley said calmly. I didn't want to hurt you. Just stop you. Brock nodded. I'm going to see a doctor too, just to be sure. But maybe I want to ask you something. What? Riley asked suspiciously. Your father, Tiger Jackson, can I really train at his dojo? I mean, I'm hoping to get a sports scholarship for college this year, and what I could learn from him. Riley couldn't hide her surprise. You? Really? Damon and Eric also looked eager, expectantly looking at Riley. Brock looked serious. Yes, I saw how fast and controlled you were. I want to be like that too. Riley thought for a moment, then nodded. Okay, after school at 4 o'clock, Fremont Street, number 1872. But I'm warning you, my father is a tough teacher, and he never tolerates bullying. That's fine, said Brock. Thank you. After Brock and his friends walked away, Olivia looked at Riley in amazement. What just happened? She asked. Did Brock Wilson just apologize? Sometimes people can accept defeat, Riley said, smiling. And maybe this was a good lesson for him. So now are you… friends? No, said Riley, shaking her head. Not yet. But maybe we can be. After school, Riley called her father. Dad? It's Riley. I'm bringing a few potential students. Students? Her father asked on the phone. From school? So soon? Long story, said Riley. I have something to explain, okay? I'm listening, her father said, with a slight concern in his voice. Riley briefly explained what had happened at school, Brock pulling her hair, her defending herself, and the subsequent apology. "And now these kids want to come to the dojo?" her father asked, sounding a bit surprised. "Yes, is that a problem?" There was a moment of silence. Then her father laughed. "No, not a problem. Actually, it could be interesting. How many are coming?" "3, maybe more," said Riley. I think, I think they're really interested, Dad." "All right, bring them over." "But Riley." "Yes, Dad." "I'm sorry you had to defend yourself." "Sorry you had trouble again." Riley smiled slightly. "It's okay, Dad. This time was different. This time, maybe I can change something." "My smart girl," her father said proudly. "I'm looking forward to seeing you." The same day after school, when Riley arrived at her father's new dojo, she was met with a surprising sight. Not just Brock, Damon, and Eric were waiting at the door. There were other students too. Olivia was among them, with a few of her friends. "Dad," Riley called as soon as she entered, "I think you have new students." Doug Tiger, Jackson, a man in his 40s, broad-shouldered, tough-looking, but with kind eyes, emerged from the exercise room and looked at the group at the door. "Well, well," he said with a slight smile. "You've become quite popular on your first day, Riley." Riley smiled shyly. "Long story, but these are Brock, Damon, and Eric from school, and this is Olivia and her friends." "And why are they here?" her father asked, raising his eyebrows. "They want to learn martial arts," said Riley, then leaned towards her father and added in a low voice, "I promise I invited them. And there's a good reason." Doug looked at the 3 boys suspiciously, then turned to his daughter. "Okay, but I want to hear the whole story later." "Sure, Dad," said Riley. Doug turned to the newcomers. "All right, kids. Welcome to Tiger Dojo. Here you won't just learn technique. You'll also learn discipline, respect, and self-control. If you accept this, come in." Brock stepped forward and bowed, like he had seen in martial arts movies. "Thank you, Sensei." Doug laughed. "You still have a lot to learn, kid, but at least you're starting with the right spirit." The first lesson was hard for students completely new to martial arts. Doug showed them the most basic stances and movements, corrected them repeatedly, his patience never running out. Riley helped, partnered with her father in demonstrations, worked one-on-one with the new students. Brock in particular seemed focused. He tried to perfect every move, listened carefully to every correction. By the end of the exercise, he was covered in sweat, but there was a strange look of satisfaction on his face. This, this was really hard," said Brock, approaching Riley. "Every beginning is hard," said Riley, "but if you continue, it gets easier." "I want to continue," said Brock, a determined look in his eyes. "Really?" Riley smiled. "Then you'll be here tomorrow." "Definitely," said Brock, then hesitated a bit. "And Riley, at school tomorrow, I don't know, maybe we could have lunch together. Me and my friends, I mean. If you want, you and Olivia." Riley was surprised. "Seriously?" "Yes," said Brock. "Like you said, maybe we really can be friends." A month later, things had changed dramatically at Oak Ridge High. Riley was no longer the new girl. She was now known as Tiger Jackson's daughter, a martial arts expert, and one of the most interesting students at the school. And even more surprising, Brock Wilson and his crew had transformed from being the school's intimidating bullies to becoming a kind of protector. Brock, as if trying to make up for the mistakes of his early teens, had become particularly protective toward younger students and those who were excluded. Riley watched this transformation with pride. During one lunch, Brock and Riley were sitting at the cafeteria table, surrounded by a mixed group of friends, athletes, science kids, artists, all together. "I learned a new technique from your dad today," said Brock excitedly. "Ippon Shoi Naj. I'm guessing this is the same technique you applied to me on that first day." Riley laughed. "You weren't ready for this a month ago. But now, maybe." "I'm thinking," said Brock, lowering his voice, "maybe martial arts could be a path for me in college. I mean, alongside football. I asked your dad, he said he thinks I could compete at the college level." "That's great, Brock," Riley said with a genuine smile. "You really are talented. And the best part is, you're now developing not just your physical strength, but your discipline and character too. All thanks to you, said Brock, stirring his drink on the table. If you hadn't stopped me that day— You stopped yourself, said Riley. I just held up a mirror to you. Just then, a commotion broke out in the cafeteria. In one corner, an argument had started between two underclassmen and was quickly turning into a physical fight. Brock and Riley stood up at the same time. I'll handle this, said Brock, moving away from the table. As he approached the fight, he separated the two boys, holding them with both hands. Hey, stop, he said, his voice authoritative but calm. What's going on here? He stole my project, one of the boys shouted. Liar! I used my own idea, the other replied. Brock looked at both of them, then shook his head. Okay, calm down. Hitting each other won't solve the problem. Come with me to the vice principal's office, and let's talk about this in a civilized way. Riley watched as Brock handled the situation calmly and felt proud. A month ago, Brock would probably have encouraged the fight, maybe even joined in. Now he was finding a solution and making peace. He's changed a lot, hasn't he? Said Olivia, coming to Riley's side. Yeah, said Riley. We all have. 3 months later, as winter break approached, there was great excitement at Oak Ridge High. The school administration had invited Riley's father, Doug Jackson, to give a special martial arts and self-defense seminar at the school. The seminar was open to all students, but was particularly aimed at female students, to teach them how to defend themselves. I'm so excited, said Olivia, approaching Riley. They were hanging up seminar posters in the school hallway. Your dad is really going to teach here. Yes, exciting, said Riley, a bit shy. But you know, my dad can sometimes be a bit intense. What do you mean? Well, he's a world champion. Sometimes he can expect more than people can handle. I guess Brock has proven that wrong, Olivia said with a smile. 3 months ago, he was nearly passing out in the gym, but now he's one of your sensei's best students. Riley nodded. Brock had indeed become one of the most hardworking and dedicated students at her father's dojo. He was there after school every day, doing extra training every weekend. He had embraced not just the physical aspects of martial arts, but the philosophical aspects as well. Riley, Brock called from the end of the corridor, walking quickly towards them. I have big news. What is it? Riley asked curiously. Your dad is taking me to the young adult tournament in Chicago for New Year's. He said you're coming too. Really? Riley asked, surprised. He didn't tell me anything. He probably wanted to surprise you, said Brock excitedly. This will be my first tournament. Brock, that's wonderful, said Riley, smiling sincerely. You've really worked hard. All thanks to you, said Brock. That first day when I pulled your hair, I thought I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. But now I understand that it was the luckiest day of my life. Riley laughed. That's a pretty dramatic way of putting it, but I'll take it. Brock looked serious. I mean it, Riley. You and your dad changed me. Now I feel better about myself. Stronger, but in a different way. Something inside me has changed. Riley could feel the sincerity in Brock's words. My father always says, real martial arts is not about defeating your opponent, it's about defeating yourself. And I've defeated myself, said Brock, smiling. 6 months later, preparations were underway for Oak Ridge High's Spring Festival. Riley, though not one of the most popular students at the school, was respected by everyone. And surprisingly, Brock Wilson, once the school's intimidating bully, was now one of her closest friends. Will you be ready for the demonstration today? Riley asked, meeting Brock in the school hallway. Brock nodded, excitement in his eyes. Yes, we finished the final exercises. Your dad approved. So you're not scared? The whole school will be watching. Brock laughed. 6 months ago, I thought what could be more embarrassing than being floored by a girl. Now I understand that what was truly embarrassing was trying to prove myself by hurting others. Riley smiled sincerely, seeing how Brock had changed. He was on the right path. That evening, in the school gymnasium, in front of a large audience, Riley and Brock, under the guidance of Doug Jackson, presented a martial arts demonstration. Brock's movements were now controlled and disciplined. Riley's movements were, as always, graceful and powerful. The demonstration began with a full kata, a series of movements in martial arts, then continued with demonstrations of some basic techniques. Riley and Brock then performed a randori, controlled free fighting demonstration. The audience was mesmerized, especially those who had seen Brock's dramatic progress in 6 months. Towards the end of the demonstration, Doug Jackson took the microphone. "I want to thank Oak Ridge High and our community for giving us this opportunity," he said. "Martial arts is not just about physically defending ourselves. It's also about disciplining our minds and spirits, treating ourselves and others with respect and honor." The crowd applauded. "The two young people you see here today show what true martial artists are. Riley, of course, is my daughter. She's been trained all her life. But Brock only started 6 months ago, and his progress is perhaps one of the most impressive things I've seen in my life." Brock humbly bowed his head at this praise. "Brock," Doug continued, "please step forward." Brock stepped forward, curious. Doug took a white belt out of a box, but the end of the belt was yellow. "This is a sign that you've moved to the next level. You're no longer a white belt, you're now a yellow belt." Applause erupted. Advancing a level in the dojo was a great achievement, especially in such a short time. Brock bowed deeply as he took the belt, his eyes shining with pride. "Thank you, Sensei." At the end of the demonstration, as the crowd gave a standing ovation, Brock turned to Riley. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "When I pulled your hair that first day, I thought I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. But now I understand that day was actually the luckiest day of my life." "Why?" Riley asked. "Because you taught me not just how to defend myself, but also how to control my own power," said Brock. "And that's the most valuable lesson I could learn." Riley smiled and bowed, and Brock did the same. The gymnasium once again echoed with applause. 2 years later, Riley and Brock had completed their college applications. Riley wanted to study psychology at a university in Boston. Brock was going to a school in Chicago with both martial arts and football scholarships. At the graduation ceremony, they sat side by side. Over the past 2 years, they had created a revolution at Oak Ridge High. Under Brock's leadership, bullying had almost completely disappeared from the school. The number of students training at Riley's father's dojo was now more than 50. And more importantly, the walls between social groups at the school had been broken down. "Time to say goodbye, I guess," said Brock after the diploma ceremony. "Not goodbye," Riley said with a smile. "Just a break." "You're right," said Brock. "Boston and Chicago aren't that far apart. And we can always meet at the dojo during holidays." Brock nodded, then took a small box from his pocket. "I want to give you something, as a token of my gratitude." Riley opened the box and found a small jade pendant with Japanese symbols meaning strength and honor. "Brock, this is beautiful," she said, taking out the necklace. "Your father helped me choose it," said Brock. "He said these symbols best describe you." Riley put the necklace around her neck, touched. "Thank you, Brock. This means a lot to me." Brock bowed slightly as he had learned in the dojo. "And your friendship means a lot to me." Riley bowed back. 2 years ago, when her hair was pulled and she had to defend herself, she could never have imagined such a friendship would be born. But here they were, as graduates of Oak Ridge High, standing as both friends and companions on the martial arts journey. Sometimes the most unexpected encounters in life turn into the most valuable lessons. For Riley Jackson, the first day at Oak Ridge High was the beginning of a journey that started with bullying and ended with friendship, and a story that began with a bully pulling hair ended with a chapter of mutual respect and understanding. "You know," said Riley, looking at Brock, "these were the best 2 years I've spent here." "Mine too," said Brock with a smile. "And this is just the beginning." If this story touched you, please like and subscribe to our channel. Turn on notifications for more inspiring stories. Where are you watching from? Share in the comments. See you in our next story.